Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to look at the best decks in MTG Arena Historic Best of 3 Traditional Historic, and we're going to be focusing Diamond and Mythic rank to see towards the end of the month what folks are trying to slot into their top Mythic rank finish with. So we're going to get the data from UntappedGG, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, aggregates user win rates, gives us a whole bunch of stats which we'll be looking at today. So the link for Untapped is in the video description. All the deck lists will be found in the video description. We'll timestamp them so you can copy paste to your heart's content. For some of the decks that are similar, so like the various kind of flavors of Sorin, I've grouped them together. Some smaller sample size to get more diversity of decks. So focus less on the necessary win rates. These are all competitive decks that can allow you to win at a high level in terms of the rank ladder. Also in the video description, ways to support the channel, as well as ways to kind of just follow, to keep up with the content on various platforms. So Diamond and Mythic rank, not a huge amount in terms of diversity of popularity of the day right now that we're getting. It's a smaller window, but Eldrazi is very popular right now. You'll have Sorin piles, you have Auras, you'll have Boros Energy. You can have some combo decks in there mixed in as well. But Modern Horizons 3, it's a powerful set and it's impacted the format quite a bit. 7,300 games played for the last week, the 17th through the 24th of May. Diamond and Mythic rank. Boros Auras, 100% win rate, best deck ever, 18 games played. So again, keep that in mind. The population's a little low, but this is a very strong deck. This is probably going to be the deck that a lot of folks kind of pick up. It's pretty linear for the qualifier. That's the deck I play most in best of 1 to kind of rank up. But basically you have a build of Light Paws, Core Spirit Dancer in this version. Very interesting to see 3 Core Spirit Dancers replacing 1 with Feather of Flight. I personally think that's wrong. I would sooner cut Amped Raptor. The engine pieces are really what makes the deck powerful, lets you churn through, gives you that velocity in terms of the deck. But the big plays here, obviously Light Paws is a toolbox effect with your auras, lets you kind of set up the turns of Demonic Ruckus on 1, plotted, Light Paws on 2, cast the Ruckus, go get like Sheltered by Ghost as a removal for their play, give you Ward, and then just kind of go to town. You have protection with Giver of Runes, Esper Sentinel for tax effects. This version here is on an Amped Raptor in the main. It's either this or Hushbringer, depending on how you want to build and attack the meta. In grindier matchups, Amped Raptor is better. Hushbringer if you're anticipating a lot of ETB style effects. But then you just kind of have like Power Boost. I like All That Glitters in the list as a one of. It's another way to kind of tutor a big power boost. Griff's Boon as evasion, Hammer Hand for pseudo evasion and haste, Sentinel's Eye for vigilance, and then Shard Mage Rescue for protection. Sideboard, you have your Luris here. Hushbringer is in here for ETB effects. You have Pithing Needle for activated abilities. Lauren's Escape for basically all types of removal. Indestructible that plays around. Really the only things that will get you is Temporary Lockdown and Divine Purge. This kind of covers you against all the kind of targeted removal that you can anticipate. Fragment Reality is cheap removal. Tormod's Crypt as Graveyard Hate. So there's also a Mardu version that's been going around. This one's from Zerakin. They went 28-3 into Mythic. So very similar concept with black in the main board. You're replacing the Amped Raptor with Juggernaut Peddlers, as well as some Thought Seizes for hand hate. So a little bit more interactive of a deck. Your mana base is obviously much more painful. Kai's Ghost Form's a very powerful card to get, given that it's kind of a protection effect that doesn't require you to necessarily have protection. You're foregoing Giver of Ruins in lieu of having the hand hate. Sideboard, you have your Hushbringers, Containment Priest for like Sorin decks, Needle for activated abilities, Fatal Push as catch-all removal for like the Luris Mirrors, Low to the Ground decks, Tormod's Crypt for Graveyard Hate. Izzet Wizards, 87%. This deck, I really want it to be good. It's showing in smaller batches. I find it kind of inconsistent in terms. So the kind of card that is revitalizing this deck is Swiftspear's Teaching. Basically reads the next creature you cast gets haste and prowess. Works really nicely with Dreadhorde Arcanist, but even just things like Symmetry Sage having haste and then prowess is very strong. Steel Cutter in here. You have Balmor in this particular one, so no slick shots. A little bit kind of more spells mattered. One thing with this deck, I've tried out Expressive Iterations. I do think Mentor's Guidance is better because at times it's hard with your mana restriction to chain together multiple Expressive Iterations, the sequencing, putting a card into exile. Usually you want to hit a land, but if you're doing it off Arcanist, you're kind of delaying some prowess triggers perhaps. So little considerations there. If you do like this art, you can craft one for uncommon now, since it does its base rarity. And then it can set it for all of them. So I upgraded these. You could do Drown in the Lock for the reduced cost, all those kind of effects. Corey Steelcutter in this version as well. It kind of gives you some more ammo. Sideboard, Mystical Dispute for cheap counter, Snapcaster for the grindier matchups, Aether Gust red-green decks, Stone of Erich for sacrifice decks, Spell Pierce for cheap interruption, and Shove Aside. I would probably trim on one of these and find spot for at least 1 to 2 Pithing Needles as well in the deck, just for the Sorin deck. Once opponent resolves Elenda, you have a very tough time in this deck to kind of keep up. So I think naming it with Needle has a lot of utility. All right, we're at the Sorin part. This is Abzan Sorin, let's call it. So the Sorin decks are Sorin Impervious Bloodlord, cheating into play Saint Elenda, which then gets a spellbook that basically has a bunch of ways to gain you life, and then it's Sarah's avatar kind of effect. You make yourself a token. So you could deal with artifacts here, you could deal with enchantments, you could deal with like kind of Faith's Feathering a creature or a planeswalker, you could draw a card, you can make another creature, and then gain some life, all very powerful in that. This one also has kind of a self-mill ability, so things like Overlord of the Baelmerk self-mills you, Malevolent Rumble, and then you can reanimate stuff with Olivia, so other ways to kind of hit it here. Emperor of Bones also can reanimate these threats. You have Bogart Trawler as well as Witch Enchanter that can be hit off the Overlords that help you dig. This version is playing 4 temporary lockdowns main, so just respecting kind of the Auras decks, the Low to the Ground decks, so interesting configuration of the deck here. You have Hopeless Nightmare and Oath of Nissa that both help you dig, as well as Dedicated Dollmaker that can blink any of these kind of effects. So this lets you reveal creature, land, or planeswalker, put it into your hand. So it's kind of a green, even though it's legendary, just helps you draw cards in that case. Sideboard, you have Flutes for activated abilities, kind of tax effect, Thoughtseize for hand hate, Surgical for combo hate, Stone of Erich for sacrifice or Johnny decks, Fragment Reality, Catch-all removal, Fatal Push for cheap removal, Haywire Might, Artifact enchantment hate, oftentimes naming something like hitting something like Pithing Needle, anything that's kind of disrupting your combo. Moving on, we have Orzhov version, 75%, so very similar concept. You have Juggernaut Peddler in this one, some Felias, Nowhere to Run that could be blinked, full set of Fragment, Deathrite Shaman in this particular version as well. So really similar concept. Instead, just playing a little bit more 2-drops to be a little bit more proactive. Divine Purge in the side for kind of the go wide, like really strong against Auras, any of the Low to the Ground decks, Vanishing Verse, effective removal against monocolor decks. Edict can hit planeswalkers, Nowhere to Run, more cheap removal, Sacrifice, activated abilities, and cheap removal and Fatal Push. Notably, no hand hate in this one, so no Thoughtseize in the side, nothing of that nature. Then we have the Jund version. So Oops All Sorins. So this one here is about kind of all-in-ish combo. Faithless Looting helps you dig. You have the Emperor of Bones Ulamog combo here. So how it works is for 4 mana, basically, you cast Emperor of Bones. You can exile Ulamog from your graveyard, bring it into play as a 4. You make a token copy of it. It sees itself in exile, so it's a 4/4 plus 10 counters. Gets haste. You annihilate their board. So it's kind of against slower decks, not expecting. You just wipe out everything from them. Otherwise, you have things like Assemble the Team that help you dig through the combo. Jarsil can let you recast stuff from your graveyard as well as you kind of go into the combo lines. Culling Ritual is very strong against the Auras decks, the energy decks, anything like that. Toxic Deluge is a sweeper, Dampening Sphere for mono green, Lotus, Surgical for cheap, like for combo hate, Sacrifice, activated abilities against any sort of heavy artifact decks, and then Haywire Might, again, as we mentioned. We have the Samwise combo. So this deck here is an infinite loop combo, Samwise Gamgee, Cauldron Familiar, and a Sacrifice outlet. Sam makes creatures coming into play create a food token, you sacrifice the Cauldron Familiar, bring it back into play off that food token, it creates a food token, create an infinite loop. You sacrifice either the Goblin Bombardment or Bartholomew, and you drain out your opponent that way there. Birthing Ritual helps you dig into the combo by sacrificing stuff. Amped Raptor helps you cascade almost into it. And then you have the Angelic Bombardment kind of fair energy game plan. Really don't understand why you have the basics in the sideboard. Maybe hedging against something with line destruction. Let me know on this one. I don't think there's enough that cat from Modern Horizon going around. Remorseful Cleric for Graveyard Hate, Carl Harpooner could deal flyers, Fragment for cheap removal, and then Haywire Might for hate pieces. So Selesnya Devotion, which is basically mono green devotion. There's two versions of mono green, like in quotations. There's the Teamer Battle Crier version. That one was at about 58% win rate. That one just is mono green with the Teamer Battle Cruiser, whatever, that 3-drop. With Karn, you do an infinite loop with Ancestral Statue in your sideboard. And then with Aetherflux Reservoir, you win. This one's just pretty much all in on Devotion. It's Selesnya because you have Elish Norn, but using Kiora with Nykthos to generate huge amounts of mana. A lot of early ramp, tap on tap. Storm the Festival helps you hit pieces to eventually hit Karn. You have a Karn board, so situational cards and win conditions. Portal to Phyrexia, sacks their 3 things. Then you start reanimating, Cityscape Levels removal. If you generated a big enough board, a Chroma's Memorial gives your team haste for the turn. Mindslaver in here to take control of opponents' turns. You can bring it back as well with Karn. Actually, this one doesn't go into exile. But you take over their opponent's turn, and then you just kind of win afterwards. Godpharaoh's Gift as a tax effect. Phyrexian Metamorphosis copy effect. You have the One Ring for card advantage. Pestilence Cauldron. You fetch it, cast Restorative Burst. You could start looping Kioras and Karns and gain infinite life. You have Pearly Snares removal, Liquid Metal Coating, activated abilities, and blow up lands with Karn. Sacrifice, cheap removal, activated abilities, hate pieces, and graveyard hate. Izzet Lotus Fields. So this one here is a combo deck. So you are using Expedition Map and just trying to find copies of Lotus Field with a trigger on the stack. You could stifle it with Consign to Memory or Stifle. That way it doesn't sack. You can then tap and tap it with Desert a Temple to generate a huge amount of mana. You have Hidden Strings, Pour Over Pages, other ways to kind of tap and untap your lands to get extra value over and over as you kind of chain together. You'll eventually fill your graveyard with Artist Talent. You cast Underworld Breach, kind of keep chaining it together until you eventually hit Wish. Wish into your sideboard. You generate enough storm count, you win with Tendrils of Agony, or you can just Jace win as well. You can do something like Tome Scour to keep milling yourself. That way there, you can just keep playing with Breach, and then you recast the Wish, and then Jace Wielder of Mysteries. That way there. Your sideboard, you have cheap removal, bounce for hate pieces. Orin's Chant is basically like a silence style effect or time walk for your opponent. Activated abilities, you can fetch a Breach from your sideboard, Divine Purge as a sweeper. Simic Eldrazi. So this deck here is pseudo colorless, kind of greenish deck. Utopia Sprawl helps you ramp. You also have Ugid's Labyrinth that lets you get basically 2 mana on turn 1 by kind of imprinting a big creature. From there, Sowing Myco Spawn can let you tutor lands or blow up your opponent's lands depending on how much mana you have. Null Drifter draws you cards. Ugin's very strong here. Exile something on cast, and then subsequent colorless casts are blowing stuff up. Kozilek's Command, just really flexible card. Card advantage, removal, graveyard hate, all mixed into one. Malavin Rumble helps you find pieces and ramps. You have like Shifting Woodlands in here that can become a copy of some of these big threats. And then Ugin's Binding, kind of a front side. Overpriced on the front side, I'd say, just for a bounce effect, but you get to basically free cast it out of your graveyard, and it's like a Cyclonic Rift afterwards. You have Treasure Vault as a land you could tutor with Karn in case you need a land. Bunch of cards we've mentioned already. This version here also has Forsaken Monument since you have a bunch of colorless stuff. Torpor Orb for ETB effects. Stone Brain for combo hate. And then Chalice on 1, Chalice on 2. You can lock out a lot of the Lurrus decks. Boros Energy. So this is a Jingantha version, not Luris. With it being Jingantha, you'll see like Arena Glory in here, Aether Hubs to generate some mana. So if you Amped Raptor, you can hit the bigger stuff. Some Fables in here, some Flage, and then Jeweled Mine Overseer. So 3 mana, 3/3 enters. You put 7 dwarves on top of your library. They perpetually get when they enter the when they come into play, you draw a card, so you kind of chain them together. At the beginning of your upkeep, you exile top card of the library and get to play. So just kind of like a card advantage. You start just spamming dwarves. This version is also on some Voice of Victory in the main. Interesting to see Kellen here. Don't necessarily love Kellen in these kind of shells. I'd probably rather play Esper Sentinel. Like 1 toughness in a bombardment meta is not the best. Path to Exile is cheap removal. You have Fragments, Guide of Souls, the Oscillate's Pride package, a Johnny, all very strong. Get Lost, cheap removal, Containment Priest for Sorin, Surgicals for combo hate, Sacrifice, cheap removal, Portable Hole, activate abilities, Path to Exile, cheap removal, and then Melts Down for Artifact decks. And then lastly, we have Mardu Sacrifice. This one is from Bearpaw, 22 and 6. So this version here is basically about kind of aristocratic style deck. You have Marionette Apprentice serving as that Blood Artist effect. Corrupted Conviction, Deadly Dispute gives you card advantage. You have a Johnny, Bombardment, Amped Raptor. Voice of Victory makes you a bunch of fodder that you can then sacrifice and silences on their turn. And then you have the Claim the Firstborn, Bombardment, or just Sacrifice effect. Kind of like the old Catavan decks in Standard. Juggernaut Peddler as hand hates. You have Molten Collapse, kind of flexible removal that can also deal with things like Pithing Needle for Bombardment. Containment Priest for Sorin decks. Thoughtseize for hand hates. Opponent sack decks. Cheap removal between Fatal Push and Portable Hole. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.